Penguin Random House presents The Path of Light by Renuka Narayan, read by Archana, Pania.
Dear reader, welcome to this collection of old Indian stories with a few from Southeast Asia. I have retold them because I found them moving, amusing, or extraordinary. They happened to come my way, touched a chord, and allowed me elbow room as a modern storyteller. I lack the words to properly express my wonder at the vast heritage of Indian storytelling, its depth and range, its inventiveness and subtle in-house cues. For instance, while retelling the story of Pingala, the pretty woman by Vyasa, it suddenly struck me that the tale could have been set in any city in any one of the Mahajanparas or major nation states of ancient India. But by being set in Videha, the city of Vaidehi Sita, Pingala's story is textured with ironic depth. Realizing the world of unstated significance in that location made me feel close to the subversive mind of that master storyteller who delighted in chiaroscuro, in playing with shades and contrasts. It was a personal Vyasa moment, as hundreds of thousands of people have had before me and always will. The supernatural may flit in and out of the events described here, but after all, these stories are from the mysterious East. Gods, yakshas, nagas and kinnaras stroll about as though they own the place, which in fact they do. This is their conceptual home and they are not going anywhere that we can tell. Why, we would be bereft without them and the exciting interface that they vivify between the known and the unknown. You could call it magic realism and be spot on. If the stories in this book have a common thread, it is their all-too-human component. They take me through some of the dilemmas and debates that beset our adventures as frail beings on the rocky road of life. Sometimes it's a misstep we take, and sometimes the sky falls on our heads. These old stories are very much about the kind of responses possible to us in various tricky situations and to each other, which is why I find them so interesting, as I hope you will. Chapter 1. Silliness is, well, silly. They say that Shakyamuni Gautama Buddha was not just tall, strong and handsome, but that he spoke very well in a low, clear voice. There were points, after all, to being raised royal and having had the very best teachers that his father, King Suddhodana, could entice to the locked pleasure park of Gautama's youth in Kapilavastu. The things that Shakyamuni said were so simple yet so interesting that the cleverest people were not the least bit bored, and the simplest people did not feel his words fly right over their heads. While the largest and the most difficult group to please, the middle brow, felt his words were just right. They were neither condescended to nor fatigued by having to keep up with one metaphysical hair being split into 76. Pitching it just so was the secret of many a great guru's success, and the goddess Saraswati, the deity of arts and learning, had evidently marked the Shakyamuni as one of her own. The concept of reincarnation is the thread of the Jatakas or tales of Buddha's previous lives, before he was born as Siddhartha, prince of the Shakyas, and attained Buddhahood in that birth. He is called the Bodhisattva or pre-Buddha in his previous lives. In one such birth, when the Bodhisattva was a trader and not a prince, he had to pass by a village on the outskirts of the city of Varanasi, to which he was headed on work. He happened to notice in the village a carpenter with a bald head hammering away at a doorframe of stout teak. Just then a bloodthirsty mosquito lighted on the carpenter's gleaming pate and stung him on his bare scalp. "Rid me of this!" he roared at his son, who was splitting wood for kindling nearby and was not very bright. The son promptly swung his axe at the insect, splitting his father's skull into two. Better a clever enemy than a foolish well-wisher, thought the Bodhisattva as he walked away, which amounts to saying that sometimes we invite disaster where we seek relief from the foolish. In another Jataka, a tortoise refused to leave its pond one extra severe Indian summer, although it was clear that the environment was drying up. The fish and crab and frogs had migrated to safety through a small water channel that still remained, but the tortoise dug himself in because it was too fond of its comfort zone and absolutely refused to read the signs. Soon there was no way left to escape from the dwindled pond, but the tortoise merely wriggled deeper into the last bit of damp earth. The Bodhisattva, who was a potter in this story, went to the remains of the pond one day to get a fresh load of raw material. His spade cracked the tortoise shell, for it looked just like a lump of clay, and the tortoise cried aloud in pain. "Serves me right for not quitting when I had the chance," it said, or the equivalent in Prakrit, and died repenting. The Bodhisattva used this unfortunate incident to show the danger of not letting go when you have to, of too much attachment to things like family, home, money, position, and power, of clinging to something that is familiar even though it is clearly bad for you. To reinforce this point in a different way, there is another Jataka that tells the story of 4 princesses of Varanasi and the Tesu tree, Butia monosperma in case of surpassing interest, also famous as the Dhak and the Palash, or as the flame of the forest, whose brilliant orange flowers are used even today to make coloured dye to smear everyone with on Holi, the festival of colours. King Brahmadatta, the father of these 4 silly princes, was fed up with his sons, each one of whom seemed more doltish than the other. They were getting on for 14, almost men by ancient Indian reckoning, but they still fought like babies and paid no attention to their teachers, nor did they seem aware of their impending duties as princes, although they were fully acquainted with each and every one of their many rights. Their father wanted to teach them some common sense and conspired with the Bodhisattva, born this time as the king's trusty charioteer. First told all kinds of fanciful tales about the Tesu tree, the princes were then nudged by the king to ask the charioteer to show them one. The Bodhisattva took the oldest to see the Tesu when it had just put forth new leaves of the most tender, delicate green. He took the second prince to see the Tesu when its leaves were dark green and spread protectively over the buds in budding season. He took the third prince to see the Tesu in its full glory of triumphant flowers, while the fourth prince got to see it only when the flowering was all done and nothing remained on the Tesu but hard brown pods. The princes were given over so wholly to the pursuit of pleasure and had so little curiosity and interest in anything beyond their daily gratification that they never thought to discuss these little field trips or to compare notes. The king had counted on this, and when all 4 were done with Tesu sighting, he set the princesses up for fine and thorough public disgrace. He commanded their presence in court at a levee, on the pretext that they were getting to be big boys and needed to take an interest in their public duties. Having dressed up and marched in proudly, the princes were arranged on small golden seats around the king, where all the assembled praja could see them. There was a good representation of subjects. All the nobility was there, of course, and the Nagar Seths or big merchants of immense wealth, and by special invitation. So were the heads of every trading, craftsman's and professional guild, along with 5 guild members each, and hoi polloi of every kind. Even the most famous and beautiful of the Nagar Vadhus or public women had taken their place, determined not to miss whatever was going to happen, for the word had spread in Varanasi that the 4 silly princes, a blot on their fair and blessed city, were going to be made a spectacle of by their desperate father. Looking at the foolish, trusting faces of his stupid sons, King Brahmadatta suffered a tiny fatherly pang for what he was about to do. But he knew very well that his duty as king came first. After the customary opening formalities of a royal court, the oboes blew slightly off key in excitement, but only the Nagar Vadhus noticed. The king introduced the princes to the praja and got down to the unpleasant task at hand. To assure the public of your worthiness, demonstrate your power.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?